All right. Hello there, everyone. Looks like most people are logged in. Can you guys all hear me and see me okay? Yes. Cool. Hello, hello, hello. All right. So we'll get going with our lecture today. We're just going to keep talking a little bit more about color and how to color for mood and stuff that will specifically be used on Project 2. So did you guys all get your grades and comments back from me okay on Project 01? Did everyone see that there? Trinity, you did not? Did you see a grade yet, Trinity? Ryan saw his.
No, I didn't see a grade yet.
Okay, it should be on there on Canvas. I'll double check to make sure yours got graded, but I'm pretty sure everyone that got it turned in should have it graded. And yeah, just double check and pay attention to those comments I make, because a lot of those comments can carry over to the next project and things like that. And if you ever have questions about how I came up with the grade, or you just want more feedback or extra comments or more ideas of how to improve your work, feel free to reach out to me, at the end of one of these Zoom meetings or over email. And I'm happy to go over that in more detail with you guys at any time, okay? But yeah, so you'll be using that project. Project 1 will directly lead into Project 2. Have people started to look at the Project 2 description yet? At all? I'm pretty sure it's up. The color script project. So go ahead and look at that today if you haven't. But what you're going to be doing is choosing 4. Good, Eleanor. Yeah, that's good to start on it if you guys haven't already. So you'll choose kind of 4 different frames from that storyboard sequence, and you're going to redraw them larger with more details and add color to it. So all that description is up there on Canvas. So make sure that you look at that today, and then email me if you have any questions. I'll show you some student examples today as well. So we can kind of be on the same page about what's expected with that. So that's due next week. So make sure you get going on that pretty soon. But it will be basically taking those rough thumbnails that you did for the storyboard, choosing 4 that you like. There's some requirements. I believe you have to do a close-up, a wide shot, and a medium shot, and then one of your choice. And then you're adding color to those using those different color schemes that we talked about last time: complementary, primary, secondary, warm colors, cool colors, monochromatic, things like that. So yeah, just take a look at the project and get started on that, and let me know if you have questions. And I see some of you guys have turned in the digital still life, but those will be due tomorrow, I believe. So yeah, just get that going. And that's really a chance for you guys just to be able to practice with color and practice with different brushes. Trinity, good questions. The 4 storyboards do not have to be in order. So it can be from any points of the story that you illustrated. Oh, Eleanor, yeah, it's due tonight. So yeah, make sure you guys get that going. And I did just want to remind you guys that there's the digital still life in the discussions. These are some brushes right here under the Project 2 section. These are brushes that I use. These are just some basic texture and painting brushes here. And these comic brushes are kind of designed to be like comic book brushes. There's an inking brush and a couple different types of inking brushes and some pencil brushes as well. So you can download these and install them on in your version of Photoshop, and you can have access to those and just kind of experiment around with them. So that digital still life is just supposed to be so you guys can practice with different brushes and things like that, and just the techniques of adding color in Photoshop to a drawing. So I look forward to seeing those. And yeah, don't worry about those being perfect masterpieces. I really just want you guys to get some practice with it, and practice coloring from reality. So if you can observe color in reality, and apply it to your own drawings, then that is a lot easier to manipulate color for an illustration, because you have an understanding of what color does in real life, and then you can manipulate that color and change it from real life to fit with a given illustration, which is kind of going to be the point of project 2. All right, so yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about color, and then we're just going to spend some time looking at some really some good art with good sophisticated use of color to hopefully give you guys some inspiration and some ideas before you start to work on that project, the next project. All right. Any questions on the digital still life or anything before we move on the next project at all?
This is kind of like a stupid question, but like, how do you crop in Photoshop? Like, crop your picture? Because mine is just too tall, and I just want to like chop off the top part.
Yeah, that's not a dumb question. Let's do picture we can use. So yeah, if here, I'll just make a new document. So you mean like you have your artwork like this with art in here? You just want to crop around there? Is that what you're asking?
Kind of, because for the still life, I used my phone upright, and it just the extra part of the top I don't want in the picture.
Okay, so maybe your artwork's like down here and you don't need the top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just your crop tool right here. So I just always use the keyboard shortcut, the letter C, and then you can draw a box right around what you need to crop, can resize it if need be, and then hit enter, and that'll crop it down.
Thank you.
Yep. So I suggest getting to know the keyboard shortcuts for these different tools. So B is brush, C is crop, W is the magic wand tool, M is the selection tool. So that just makes working a lot easier as you're working in Photoshop, to kind of have one hand on your keyboard going to the shortcuts, and then one hand drawing with a pen or using your mouse, depending on how you're doing it. But yeah, those keyboard shortcuts will make your workflow easier and make you able to kind of work faster as you're going through different stuff. Any other quick questions? All right. So today we'll talk about coloring for mood, okay? I think I mentioned last class at the kind of at the very end, so you guys took Art 109 with me. We had one project talking about how to create moods with different types of compositions. What's almost even more powerful than the type of composition you use to affect mood and affect the emotion of someone looking at your art is to be in control of the color that you're using. So color is a huge emotional indicator. It affects how people feel when they look at your work. So we started to talk about that last class, the way to combine different colors together, primary colors, secondary colors, and things like that. But we can go a little bit further with that and talk about the type of emotional indicators that you get when looking at different colors. And there are some inherent like feelings and emotions that certain colors give off. So you kind of want to be aware of that. A lot of them are ingrained in our emotions and like also in different cultures and different societies. for the meanings that different colors have. So you want to kind of be aware of kind of the general meaning that colors have, and then you can use those in different ways in your work, where it's not an exact science, you don't have to follow it exactly, but you want to know kind of how people will react to certain colors and then use that to manipulate the mood in your own artwork and how people will react to your artwork. Okay, so let's just start here with some different colors and see if we can all kind of identify some different meanings or different emotions that come with different colors. Okay, how about red? What sort of emotions or feelings do you get when you think about the color red, or if you were to see the color red on a movie screen or on a drawing? What sort of things pop up? Yes, stress, anger, those are good. Mad. Power is a good one.
Romance.
Yes, love, romance. Exactly. So I kind of find red interesting. It's a very powerful color. Definitely what Kevin said for power. It can almost overwhelm the viewer. So you want to be, you want to limit where you use red. And if you do have a drawing that's all red, just know it is going to have a very powerful feeling to the viewer. I like to think of just passionate. So passionate, high emotions, whether it's anger or love. So those aren't necessarily related, but they are both very high, intense emotions that we have. So whether it's a bad emotion or a positive emotion, using red will, get across that feeling. But limit your red, okay? So if you can have a drawing that's, has a lot of red in it, just know that it's going to really have a big emotional impact on the viewer. So if you don't want something that's big and emotional and impactful, choose a more subtle, feeling. So I oftentimes will go to more of a desaturated red, so a pink sometimes if I want to use that, but I don't want the intensity of emotion. Okay, what do you guys think of when you think of blue? Sad, depressed, yep. Anything else? Yes, calming, definitely. Flow, yes. I'll just put water in there too. Water is very calming, so blue's related to that. Okay, and there's also, kind of different types of blue too. So let's use this sort of blue here for the calming flow, the water one. And for sad, I would think of more of a dark and desaturated blue. So what is interesting to me is we got this sad, this dark desaturated blue. What if I did a blue like this? What does this sort of blue make you feel like? I get more of a happy, excited feeling from this, like the blue of the sky on a sunny day. So just the subtle differences in blue. So again, blue has those very different feelings, where if we have a lighter saturated blue, it can feel happy, but if you have that darker desaturated blue, it can feel sad. And depressed feeling, blues, the blue period of Picasso. How about this color? A big, bright yellow. What does that make you feel like? What inherent meaning does yellow have? Happy, exactly. Happy, exciting. Also childlike. So anything childish, young, art aimed at kids will have a lot of yellow in there. Bright yellow sun, things like that. So these are the primary colors. Let's move to secondary and see what we can get from those. Let's go with a green. Thoughts of green? What does green make you feel? Yep. Rich, both in terms of money, but also rich in terms of life, the earth. New. Yeah, that's interesting. New, but also toxic. Yeah, because the toxic waste. And the type of green also matters too. So, if we're doing more of a green like this, it's going to have a very different feel than a more desaturated, natural feeling green there. I'll put natural in there too, nature. So a lot of these things, yeah, it's just our own emotional reaction to them and how that affects it. Okay, what about a nice orange? Exciting, yep. Explosions, you think of, yeah, fire, exciting, fireworks. Warm, that is a good one. Warm, fire, warm interior light, modern, yep. Oh, fall, I like that. Changing, yeah. Yeah, I think about the warm one a lot. So you think about fires, obviously physically warm, but also notice the colors of lights in your house. So when you have all the lights on inside your house and maybe you're standing outside and you see that warm orange light coming from inside a house, especially at nighttime or at a cold day, I'll put cozy in here as well. It makes me feel cozy. And then what about, what's a good purple? Purple. Purple is a little interesting. So what do you guys think for purple? Yes, royal. Exotic, yeah. Luxury, mysterious, yep. So yeah, all these words and emotions and feelings from purple. Purple is just a less common color. So, in the old timey days, it was a color that only royalty could afford to have, purple colored clothing and things like that. So it is more exotic. It is less, we just don't see it around in nature as much. So it does get that kind of royal, exotic, mysterious. I also put a sophisticated. Feeling to it. So as you can see, a lot of these colors, some of them have, those opposite meanings inherent in them. Sometimes shifting the saturation, shifting the lightness will affect how we react to these colors. But these are kind of just inherent and built up in us from, living in cultures. Different cultures have slightly different feelings towards these colors as well. So it's really good to just be aware of all of these things, and then you can start to use these and manipulate them and use them in your artwork. Okay. And just use them in, you can use them in ways that they literally mean these things that we've talked about, or you can kind of, use them in the opposite way. So you can draw something that may be really scary and adult, but if you color it in yellow, it may have kind of an interesting kind of juxtaposition with the subject matter versus the color. So good to be aware of this and always have this in the back of your mind as you're using color, but color is not an exact science. So you're never going to literally translate with these colors exactly to how you these words that we have listed here, but it will be related to them in one way or another. Okay. Okay, saturation, as we mentioned last week, is just how pure a color is, how bright a color is, how vibrant a color is. And you really want to control the saturation in your work. So don't use overly saturated colors. Kind of default to using desaturated, and then in certain places and at certain moments and in some illustrations, you can use those saturated colors. So again, saturated are just the brighter colors. That's not very good. As you can see here, some colors get really saturated. So for saturated colors, you think of more excitement, action, motion, anything like that. They're loud colors, meaning they'll stand out a lot. They'll visually yell at the viewer. And then desaturated, everything is more grayed out, less pure. And desaturated are much closer to reality. So just looking around the room you live in, you are probably, or wherever you are right now, you're probably surrounded by desaturated colors. So we paint walls, desaturated whites and desaturated grays. Exteriors of houses are painted in desaturated colors. So desaturated colors are closer to reality. So yeah, we could put fantastic up here for saturated. So things that are out of this world, things like that. Desaturated colors are inherent to reality. The use of desaturated colors are more sophisticated. So if you're doing a fun, superhero story with lots of action, maybe it's aimed for kids, you would use more saturated colors. If you're doing a more grounded, down to earth illustration or down to earth story, you can just use more desaturated colors. And desaturated colors are kind of easier to combine. So like all these colors kind of work together just because they're desaturated. Whereas when I'm looking at this combination, there's kind of some clash going on with that. A lot of those colors stand out too much. So when you're working on a drawing, just start with desaturated colors, and you can always make them more saturated later. So I usually, default to desaturated, and then I just add in saturated colors here and there to help make it pop in certain places. I'll put calm in here too for desaturated colors. Okay, so you should have a plan of attack before you go in and work on a given illustration. You should think of kind of what is your end goal of this drawing, of this illustration, of this moment in your story. So whatever that moment in your story is, so since you're choosing those 4 panels, from your storyboard, you don't want to choose all that are exciting and action. So maybe you can choose one that has some action in it where you use more saturated colors, one that is more calm where you use more desaturated colors. So thinking about that is kind of how you want to plan out and start to add colors to those storyboard frames that you've been working on or that you'll choose for the next project. Okay, so here's 2 drawings that I did, and I want to think about adding some colors to this. So we did a quick example of this last class, but I kind of want to just do this again and just go through the thought process of coming up with these drawings. So so I sent you those emails last week about which YouTube videos to watch. And that goes over this whole process a little bit slower and in more detail about how you will color your work. So make sure you look at that. So here, let's look at this one first. So this is just a guy hiking through the woods along a mountain path. What sort of color scheme should I use for this? Should I start with desaturated or saturated colors for this one? This first one here. Saturate or desaturate? What do you guys think? Desaturated, yes, pretty obvious. Desaturated. Okay. So what I like to do, so we're going to do desaturated here. So let's not color for reality here. So I don't want to use greens. So typically someone in the forest, we use a lot of green to color the plants and things like that. But I don't want to worry about, making it look like reality in this image. So what's one good color I can start with for this image? What one color do you think would help give me kind of a calm feeling, a feeling of being hiking along a path that might work? Yeah, light gray. I'm going to give it a blue gray. How's that? So we'll start with a desaturated blue gray. Valentina says orange. You might be able to work in both of those. Yeah, that's kind of a good idea. We can do orange for the sky and then kind of desaturate for everything else. So the first thing you should always do with your drawing is get rid of the white. Okay, so white is going to be something we rarely use in these drawings. There will be areas of white sometimes in your artwork, but for the most part, getting rid of the white is going to be one of your first main goals when working in this drawing or on your illustrations. So just getting rid of that white and putting down one main color. I usually like to think of just one color to drop in there, kind of what's the overarching color theme or color statement I want to have for a given drawing. So for this one, we'll start with this desaturated blue gray, and we'll come back to that orange and see where we can add that in. So then as I'm working, I'm grabbing my lasso tool here. So hopefully you guys have gone through the basic videos where I show you the different tools. This is the lasso tool right here. This just allows me to select different sections of my drawing. So I'm just going to select all the trees and ground here in the foreground. So I kind of like to just separate different sections of my drawings kind of by foreground, middle ground, and background. You can also do it for light areas versus dark areas. And now that I have the trees, the ground, the guy all selected, there's a number of different things I can do. So I just want to change the color of this. So Right now we have this color. I just want to make it a little bit darker, so it stands out and it separates the foreground shapes from things in the middle ground and the background. So now when I color this in, I just made my brush larger. So I'm doing this just by holding Control and Option to change the size of my brush. You can also change the size of your brush up here. So that will change the size of your brush. But again, that keyboard shortcut helps me speed through that process. So holding Control and Option, I'm on the Mac. I'm not sure what the PC version of is for changing that, but there should be one. And then to deselect, to get rid of this selection that I just made, I hit Command D. So deselect. So now we got the foreground separated. Right now I'm not colored in the lines perfectly. That's okay. I can always go back and touch this up. But these are still rough color scripts we're doing. These aren't like fully finished illustrations. So now I'm going to select these mountains here in the middle ground, and then we'll call the sky the background. Okay, so I selected the mountains. And now I want to, as you can see here, it's selecting the darker gray of the foreground. Now I want to get rid of that section. So I go to my magic wand tool. I go over this in the videos, so if you guys have questions about this, you can watch those. Then I hold Option and get rid of that gray. So now I can come down here and color in this section of the mountains as well. 1 second, guys. All right, so now we kind of have sky as one gray, mountains are another in the foreground here. I'm going to make the foreground a little bit darker. I'm going to turn up the saturation just a little bit. So this is another nice way to adjust your colors, is this hue saturation, which is under Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. So that's another way I change the colors, is doing it that way, because then that can allow me to adjust it with these sliders, and I can be a little bit more precise with how I adjust these. And then we said we wanted that sky to be an orange. So I'm still going to keep it, let's desaturate this just a little bit. If I came in and put a bright orange, that might be just a little too much. I'm going to keep it a little bit more subtle for this. This is still a calm scene. There we go. And we know from talking about complementary colors that blue and orange goes nice together. So we have blue in more of the foreground and orange in the distance. So we know that those will look nice together. Okay, and so now we have a pretty good color scheme going on. So now you can do slight shifts in these colors. So if I want to separate the trees from the ground, I can make the ground a little bit more desaturated. And I can take this blue of the trees and I can make it just slightly green. So I can just drop this slider down towards the green a little bit. So they will appear greenish, but they're not going to be a bright green. I don't want to come in and put a green like this on here all of a sudden. That would stand out too much and not the look and the harmonious color scheme that we are going for. All right, so I could about call that one done. If I wanted my focal point, the guy, to stand out a little bit more, I could just put some light values around that person to create some value contrast. So I'm going to go in and use one of these texture brushes that you guys all have access to. I like this Worn Oil Pastel. I can turn down the opacity. I just kind of want to get some fog-like effects in here. Some mist or fog, some low-lying clouds. I'm going to go back and put a dark value on my guy so everybody's seeing that. Okay, so that's about good for what you guys will do for the next project. You can definitely take it further if you like. Adding in more details like clouds. You can add texture down here. Again, that worn oil is a very good way to add texture. So I can add some texture to make it look like there's rocks and stuff down here in along the ground. Sometimes I'll do this on separate layers where I have the texture on one layer and the other is not, but for this example, it doesn't really matter. All right, so that one's pretty good. We got desaturated colors. We got complementary scheme with blues and oranges. And there's nothing too crazy or too bright standing out. So it kind of creates that calming overall feel that we are looking for in that piece. All right, so now let's try this one with the car going. So what sort of color scheme do you guys think I should use for that one? What's a good first color I should put down for that scene, the action scene, car flying off a jump? We got a diagonal in there for a Dutch tilt. A red. What kind of red, Kevin? Saturated red, yes. Let's try that. Boom. Okay, so we got our red. What is a good color to go with that red that I could use? Maybe a complementary color, what another secondary color I could use? Anyone have an idea? Another color I could use to go well with that red? Orange, yeah, I could do orange. So that's kind of an analogous scheme. Or yellow, yeah. Let's do, yeah, kind of an analogous with warm saturated colors. So bright orange, and then maybe a bright yellow as well. Okay. So now, again, I'm just going to select and separate different sections of this. So I'm going to select the ground here. Not always, but almost every time that you're working, the ground is going to be darker than the sky. So I'm making this ground darker and also desaturating it just a little bit so we can leave that brightest red right around the car. Okay. Now for the car, I can use one of these colors that we worked on. Let's try that bright yellow. There we go. Now we got a nice action feeling going for this. And we know, just kind of using all these these warm, saturated colors, that this color scheme should work out. You know, every once in a while you'll put down a color and it won't quite work out as well. That's okay. You can always change it. So I'll use some of these oranges for the cloud. I'm going to put another cloud in over here. Want a lighter value here for the sun. It just took me a second to find the kind of the right light value that I wanted for that sun there. All right, so right now this is a pretty good scheme we got going on. Now I can come in and do variations of that, so I can make, you know, the lights there a lighter value, make a darker value here in the windows. You have a darker value for like the rear view mirrors, license plate, hubcaps can be like a desaturated kind of a gray. Now I'll come back in this section and just create a little variety here. Oh, I'll use some of this orange here for the cones. It's a slightly different value to add some texture in here. Maybe even some speed lines, help get some motion going. So as you can see, I set up my color scheme here, but as I'm applying it to the actual drawing, I'm not following that exactly. You can, you know, move stuff around and make it a little bit different. And just play with that color to see what will work best once you get into the illustration. Kind of make some dust and stuff flying up here as well. All right, so yeah, we got two pretty good color schemes going on there. One more desaturated, more calm, kind of more values, more based in reality. This one here, our second one, is much more saturated with a lot of bright, vibrant colors, trying to get a sense of motion and action going across in that color scheme. So this next project will give you a chance to kind of experiment and see how you can use what we were talking about earlier, these different inherent meanings of the colors to then affect that given mood for a given illustration, a given moment in your story, and a given mood that you are trying to communicate and feeling you're trying to communicate to the viewer. Okay. Any questions on that, on just picking colors, how to decide on color schemes, the meaning of different colors? All right, so hopefully you guys have fun with this next project. Yeah, and just really kind of see how you can use color in your own work. So let's look at some examples of professional artists and kind of see what color schemes they used and how they applied that. So I'll just open up some artwork and we can kind of discuss the color schemes that we see. Okay, here's a panel from Daredevil. This is by the artist. The penciler and inker's name is Bruce Timm. I'm not sure who the colorist is, even though we're talking about the color. So what sort of color scheme do you guys see in here? And why do you think they used it? Is it complementary? Is it primary colors, warm colors, cool colors, secondary, saturated, desaturated? Here we go, what Kevin said. Yep, complementary, definitely. So again, it's this reds and oranges against the cool blue. So that makes, so this is the colors for this character. So comic book character, they're gonna use more saturated, bright colors for the character. So those bright colors are going to stand out a lot, but the really good decision here is making the background desaturated. So if this was like a bright blue background, it would take away from the bright reds and oranges or yellows and reds on the costume. So desaturated blues for the background, bright reds for the foreground. That separates the background and foreground and allows those saturated colors to pop off. But again, it's cool colors in the background, warm colors there in the foreground. So you can see the difference there. And it's really allowing this character to stand out from that background. So really nice use of it there. You know, an overall simple scheme. So all we see red, yellow, and kind of 2 blue grays. So it's really not complicated at all, only about 4 colors used in there. And again, that's the biggest thing, is just limit those colors that you use. You don't want to use the entire color wheel in one of your drawings. How about this image? What color scheme do you guys see in here? And what are the major colors used here? Yep, red and green together, always a good combination. So how would you guys describe that green? It's used really well. So the green is much more desaturated. Yeah, it's like a teal basically. So it's not that big, bright. It's not like this green. If we were to put like a big, it's nothing like this green here. So yeah, desaturated green. And yeah, the red is a little bit more saturated than the green, which kind of works to draw our eye right to this section. That's the focal point. So remember, those saturated colors are also a good way to make a focal point stand out. So the viewer wants our eye to go right here. So in this big sea of greens and blacks, basically, our eye is going to go right here to this red section where you have green against red, drawing our eye to that focal point. But nothing's too, you know, they could make this red more saturated. It's not like this red that we used in this example. It's much more subtle, and it's kind of it's slightly more orange as well. I'll just show you another red and green while I got it here. So this is Norman Rockwell. So he's doing red and green again, but you can see, so big use of that green for the back wall, red for all of this stuff in the foreground. And then even the skin tone is slightly orangish reddish. The suit here is a very, very desaturated green, but pretty much everything in here is one version of a red or a green. So this red or green for the clothes is just very, or the green on the clothes is very desaturated green. And everything else is that hit of red. So they just play off each other nicely. You don't see a lot of blues in this one. You don't see oranges. You don't see purples in here. So just very good and subtle use of that complementary color scheme. Okay, what color scheme is this one using? This is from the book Dinotopia books. The artist is James Gurney. So what's the main color here, and is there a color scheme being used in this illustration? Yes, purples and blues, yep. So the overarching colors are those purples and blues, and then there's little hits of yellows, exactly, Eleanor, because the yellows are the complementary to the purple. So you kind of see yellow, purple, and then just little bits of those blues in there, subtle shifts in the purple, and then yellows to kind of help highlight it. My thinking, the way I see it, if you guys see the same thing, is that the focal point is right here on the head of this kind of robotic dinosaur guy. This is where the biggest area of yellow is against that purple. So yellow against purple will kind of draw our eye right here to this focal point within the entire composition. But again, nothing too saturated. Probably this yellow right in here is the most saturated. You get some little hits of that saturated blue, like on these little technology screens here. But look how small this little section is of these saturated blues. It's very, very tiny within the overall composition. So again, you can have areas of high saturation, but just put it in very small places. Okay, how about this one? What color scheme we got going on here? What's the main color here? What color do you think they put down first when starting this illustration? Yep, blue, pretty simple there, yeah. So this one's almost monochromatic, so it's almost all shades of blue. So you get a little shift in the blue back here. You get some slightly more green blues in the hill, but pretty much everything is a shade of blue. And then you get a little bit of warm color right there on the characters. So a little bit of red in the jacket and a little bit of kind of orangish brown on the dog, but it's such a small part of the overall composition. Kind of helps the two characters to stand out. But overall, this is a monochromatic blue illustration. So really nicely done here. And as a way to, really simplify things, just go with monochromatic for some of your options as well. Okay, how would you describe this color palette? This is Andrew Wyeth, a painter. What is this color scheme? Yep, grays and desaturated greens, very much so. So here, this artist, this painting is done, I believe, if not directly from real life, inspired by real life. He lived in Maine and did a lot of paintings of kind of the Maine landscape and places where he lived. But he was very, very subdued with his color palette. He didn't want bright, exciting, fantastical colors. He wanted everything desaturated, everything grounded in reality. And to kind of have that calm, it is kind of a sad, more somber tone to these drawings or these paintings because of those desaturated colors. So the most saturated color you get is this little stripe of green right through here. Other than that, everything is very desaturated. So all this grass here in the foreground. If you would have made this whole grass down here, this bright of green, it probably would have been too overwhelming and taken away from that calm and somber mood. So you just put a little strip of a saturated green. Everything else is desaturated. No color in the sky. I mean, again, it's very easy to combine you can combine almost any color together as long as it's desaturated. So that's a really nice way to make a harmonious color palette, is just use a lot of desaturated colors. Here is another artist. I'll just pull up two of his. So this is the artist Adrian Tomine. I show his work in my Art 109 class sometimes. But he is a comic book artist, but all of his stories are about real people in real life situations. It's about relationships, things like that. But as you can see, it's a comic book, but this is completely different from, Batman or Daredevil or Spider-Man or whatever it may be. And his colors reflect that. So everything is very desaturated. You get a little bit of more saturated colors on the characters themselves. Okay, so he leaves the backgrounds very, very desaturated, just basically one shade of gray here for all the backgrounds. Same for this one, very similar. You get a slightly different blue in here, but basically everything is desaturated in the background. And he leaves a little bit more saturated colors for skin tones. But even the clothes that the characters are wearing are pretty desaturated. This character has pink on, but it's a very desaturated red in there. So again, the types of colors that this artist chooses matches the type of stories he's telling. If this was colored with bright saturated colors, it would look really weird, especially for the subject matter that's going on. So that's Adrian Tomine. If anyone's interested in his work, I suggest you check it out. He's one of my favorite comic book artists. Okay, what's another good one? Oh, let's look at another monochromatic. So this is the artist Daniel Klaus. Again, another comic book artist. He influenced Adrian Tomine a lot, kind of similar style stories. But you can see here monochromatic, so not a lot of color variety, but it simplifies the whole thing to really just be using black, white, and then one monochromatic color. So here's one using that orange and blue color combination. So you can do this too for something. So here we'll talk about light and shadow. One of the next classes, I want to get it in, but see here, so on this mountain or this rock formation, the light side is warm oranges and the shadow side is those blue cool shadows. So you can do that on one object too. And lots of times you can think of highlights, or the light side of an object is going to be warm and the cool side and the shadows is going to be cool. Highlights warm, shadows cool. So this is a very dramatic representation of that. And you can see, we might see something like this in reality, but this artist is exaggerating it. So he's bumping up the saturation of these colors to make them more bold and make them really pop and stand out to the viewer. So he's augmenting what you may see in reality. So here's that warm feeling we talked about with oranges. So oranges a lot of time with sunsets, that warm sun. So just thinking about, so this one's almost all monochromatic. You got all the oranges in the skies, but then you do have some dark, desaturated, cool colors here in the foreground. So it'll be good for you guys to start looking at art this way. Here's a monochromatic, all shades of that green. So when you see a color or you see an image or you see even scenes in real life, take a minute and just kind of think and note what the color is. Oh, I didn't even notice this one. This is monochromatic, but they have just a little hit of red in the eye. Is a really nice choice there. So I think so here's a photograph. So this is what I was talking about with those warm lights. So each light produces a different color light. So whether it's natural light and the sun, the sun in the middle of the day when it's straight up above you is going to have a very different feeling than when the sun's setting or the sun's rising or when there's clouds overhead. So same with the different types of lights. Some lights have very warm lights and make everything feel very warm and orangey. There's, fluorescent lights are much cooler and make things feel not cozy and kind of inhospitable with a lot of desat or cool light. Here's all cool colors, purples and blues with just a little bit of yellow here on the horses. This is Mary Blair concept art for Cinderella, I believe. Here's another photograph. So notice, so the overcast lighting. So if this was a bright sunny day in this image, all the colors would look different. So this is overcast lighting, so pretty gray. You can see in this is a photograph, so everything's desaturated. So all these buildings are desaturated, sky's desaturated, the ground is desaturated. then you just get little bits of saturated color. So on the signs, little bits of saturation, little bits, little bits, little bits. These fruits here have a little bit of saturation, but overwhelmingly, this is a desaturated scene. It's little bits of saturation here and there. So kind of just start to take notes as you go through your life, daily life, and see different colors, different lighting effects, and how it affects color. So this is the background from a Warner Brothers Looney Tunes cartoon. This is a cartoon for kids. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to, you know, capture kids' attention. It's supposed to be loud. So a lot more saturated colors. Putting saturated colors right next to each other makes them very loud and pop and really stand out. So different intention for art like this, meant for a cartoon, versus an illustration like this, which is meant to be more somber and calm and closer to reality. So you should be coloring for story, coloring for emotional indicators, and just using a section of that color wheel that we talked about last class. So you don't want to use all colors, just pick and choose which colors to use. And again, when I'm working, usually I like to put down one major color first to really stand out and kind of define what color scheme I am going for. Any questions on color schemes like that? Different color combinations? All right, so now I'll show you guys a few student examples of project 2. Some good examples. So this is basically what you will have to do for the next project. So again, you'll choose 4 frames, 1 wide, 1 medium, 1 close-up, and then 1 of your choice, and then 4 color schemes to go with each of those frames. So you could do complementary, saturated, desaturated, warm colors, cool colors, any of the ones we've talked about over the last 2 classes you can use. Analogous colors. This is Carmela Luz. So again, make sure you guys save it in a single PDF. So there are a few people that didn't do that. So just make sure you figure out how to do that. There's a couple ways to do that. And if you can't figure it out, just let me know and I can help point you in the right direction. But here she has a desaturated scene with just those red and blues as the only saturated colors. So that kind of makes sense for the story. She's trying to get a more somber emotion, but then still having those bright colors to make the focal point stand out and having just a small section of saturated colors. Okay, so all cool colors here with just a little bit of red for that title or for the sign there on the hospital. Here's monochromatic, so only blues for a sad scene in the story. Trying to get that somber feeling. So notice the type of blues here. So there's no bright sky blues or anything in here. They're all the desaturated blues, darker values to help get across that emotion. And then warm colors here, so yellows and pinks. And I think she probably could have bumped up this yellow, made it just a little bit brighter and more saturated in the background to kind of show this seems like an exciting or surprising moment in the story. So she could have gone a little bit brighter with that yellow just to push it a little bit. This is Laura's from last summer. Oh yeah, so make sure too, the last project didn't have it, but label each drawing that you illustrate with what you're doing. So close-up shot and then monochromatic there. So I do want to see that labeled with each frame that you're illustrating for the next project, so I can know what thought process you're going through when you're doing that. So nice use of blues here, all monochromatic. I would just say she could have gotten some darker values maybe in the hair to just surround the lighter face with a darker value of hair. medium shot primary colors. So yellows, blues, and reds here. And this is a good choice for this yellow. So we talked about that yellow being kind of happy and childlike here for that bright yellow, but I think it works a lot better for this scene to have it be more of a desaturated yellow. Then wide shot complementary. So purples and oranges. And then 4-shot analogous colors. So basically all those warm colors, yellows, oranges, and reds. So that's actually similar to the car that we did today. The Elijah's. Oh, he only has 3 here. Oh, that was 2. So I think this one's primary colors for the most part, bright saturated colors. Then we have monochromatic, and then analogous or complementary with blue against all the reds and oranges. This is Alicia's here. So here's a wide shot with warm colors. Medium shot with primary colors. And again, good use of not overly saturating the yellow. This little red right here is kind of the most saturated. Then monochromatic. So when you do monochromatic, this one was okay for what she did, but choose at least one color to do for monochromatic. This is basically completely desaturated to be black and white. So she should have just made this, all shades of blue or one hue. And then complementary colors here for reds and greens. So I thought this one was a nice choice there for the reds and greens as well. And this red for the photo booth really stands out against the greens there in the background. This is Jessica's. So complementary, orange and blue. Monochromatic, all those shades of yellow. Cool colors, so blues, purples, and greens to get that kind of sad feeling. And then primary colors, blue, yellow, and red. But the red is very desaturated. So remember, especially if you're going to do a big section of red, just desaturate a bit so it's not too overwhelming and bright, unless you're going for that really big action-packed, dramatic, heightened emotion moment in your story. One more. Okay. All right, any questions on that, on the next project and kind of the goal of that? All right, so that's pretty much it for today. So yeah, I'll look for those still lifes to come in later today. And then this project 2 is due next Wednesday. So if you do have last minute questions on that before you turn it in, we will have our Zoom meeting next class or next week. So you can ask questions then, or email me throughout the week anytime and I will check that and kind of see your work in progress. There won't be a new drawing challenge for this week, just finish up the still life and then work on project 2. And that video series, this one here in our playlist, these videos I sent you last class, episode 9 shows you how to do this, install the brushes and what the different brushes do. It shows you how to take your sketch from a thumbnail storyboard to a larger, more finished drawing with details in it. This is adding colors, and this is another color demo as well. So these videos and the last 2 lectures will kind of give you all the information you need to finish off the project. But if anything else comes up, please let me know. And again, I'm happy to look over your work before you turn it in. Just send it to me during the week and we can go from there. All right, so if you guys have any questions, I'll leave this open for a second, but that will be it for today, and I will see you guys next week.